that we weren't recording. Yeah.
Wake up, patriotic America.
Is that the theme? So we talk. So no one else has wanted to talk about current events.
No.
And for the most part,
it's like tongue kissing also the third rail for authors.
And everyone's like declined to talk about really their own work in like a promotional way, you know. But this being this unique moment that we're at, and we're recording some thoughts for grandchildren and future PhD candidates to research. Like, do you want to talk about current events? It's all right.
Huh? Oh, me?
Yeah.
No, well, I mean, so far the stuff that I've done has been kind of infused with politics anyway. So I'm outspoken. I think I'm a political animal. Like I follow politics the way people follow team sports. Mm-hmm. And so, yeah, I mean, I can talk to that, and I can talk to writing, and I can shamelessly promote, and I can make sure that people are aware that George Soros, Kanye West, and Kermit the Frog are all trying to steal our vital bodily fluids.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. American bodily fluids. Yes. So,
True blue.
Introduce yourself, sir.
Okay.
Why are you on the show?
I'm test subject David Kopf, and I'm a career editor and publisher and a sufferer of all things media. Oh, and what happened here? Something is my connection still working for you?
Oh, crystal clear.
Oh, weird. Okay, so and then also I wrote one book so far. Tea in Crimea, which is a work of fiction set in 2014 Crimea and Ukraine as a whole, and it's a work of fiction worked around the Russian invasion and annexation of Crimea, and it's half political thriller and half just talking about how global politics can upend everyday people's lives, and so like a lot of books, I think it's a book more about a place than it is about people, but it's also about people. I think that's kind of what I'm about. And to talk about politics and the artistic process, this is a good question. And that is, how have the events of the past 4 years culminating in this, what I don't even feel the slight bit remorse saying is an attempted coup, how has that impacted your process as a writer? Because I know for me, it's made it really hard. I get distracted and doom scroll like crazy, and my mind's not on the game at all.
Yeah, so that's interesting, because your novel is so political and obviously written and researched during and post the events that were taking place, which were life and death moments, and nail biting, and still of like remarkable political importance globally, and you were able to write it then. So I don't know what's changed for you.
I think the immediacy. I think the fact that I have 3 kids in a country that's currently presided over by a madman, and so it's a little different when it's happening half a world away. That book I was able to write in real time. I wrote it as a blog where I would have at least weekly installments. So the first draft was written like almost in the exact same time that the events in the novel play out. It was the weirdest artistic process. It was the weirdest writing process. I wrote that in real time. I wrote that there's a photograph. So a bunch of Russian special forces took over a Ukrainian Air Force base near Sevastopol in Crimea, and all these Ukrainian Air Force guys went to go march to the base and say, hey, you know, Russian brothers, right, give us back this base. And they wouldn't. And so it turned into a confrontation. All the Ukrainians were unarmed, and all the Russian special forces guys were armed. There's video of this like crazy all over the internet. So they started firing over their heads and all sorts of crazy stuff. It was nuts. And there's this one Russian, you know, junior officer, probably like lieutenant, just sitting there, and you know, because they all removed their insignias and anything that would identify them as to who they were, and this look on his face, you could tell he was just like a single individual who had this look on his face like, if I don't handle this correctly, this could touch off like a massive global conflict. And and I was like, I got to write a book about that guy, even though that guy isn't in the book at all.
Right.
And that was the genesis of that. So a friend set up a WordPress blog for me, and I just started writing it. And it was just a big, like, barfed out a draft. And then a total by the seat of the pants, and then went back and cleaned it up later.
Okay, so maybe to some degree, as compelling as the events were to you to like inspire you to write that, it's still like there's a proxy of distance. Like it's the overseas engagement, you know, it's not here, and so
yeah,
I haven't really talked to anybody about this. So I don't know if this even like holds merit, but you know how like one large organism can take on aspects like of its individual componenture. Like if one cell gets sick, it can spread. I think maybe people with PTSD in aggregate as a nation, you can have PTSD altogether. And so I think it differs probably per generation. Like, is this evocative of Cuban Missile Crisis, or is this evocative more of the Russian scare, you know, and growing up in, you know, 60s and 70s? Like, I just had this sense that what's really, really, really heightening about this particular moment in the United States is one, yeah, its historical significance, but a lot of us had a sense of imminent nuclear annihilation during our youth.
Yeah.
Now, yeah, younger than us, 9/11, like they're going to have like a different contextual reference point, but I think it's still the same. Like when something traumatic happens as a kid and it's unresolved, the PTSD response kind of gets programmed in you. And like socially, we've got like each generation is just kind of waiting for that next shoe to fall. Like that's how it feels with PTSD. Like any good time, hey, they're singing happy birthday, but any second, this birthday party is going to be ruined. Like there's always a sense of imminent.
Oh, totally. Yeah.
That prior primordial ooze of ourselves uncertainty. And it's that lack of certainty or predictability of the world that gets shattered that can kind of trigger PTSD. And I kind of think at scale, we've got it. And it heightens these moments. Now, I could extrapolate even further and say, no, it's like actually part of the biological death drive versus sex drive. And we're always genetically programmed from our species to be seeking end times prophecy or like imminent doom. But I don't know. I feel like witnessing trauma can be triggering, like seeing another country go through it. But for a lot of people, seeing something in a place where they can locate on a map easily without it being named, I think it's easier to just kind of pretend it doesn't exist or turn it into almost media. But when it's home, I think it does wake up those childhood geopolitical fears
I think that's
of being in the US. I don't know.
No, I think that's really accurate. I think that there's something to that, and there's also a real problem with white supremacy in this country, and other forms of bigotry that I think get keyed by have been keyed by the past 4 years. and that gets, and so you get in the situation where it's like you're all freaked out because there's just this general like base level of doom. Then you have these moments of just like peak, what is going on? This is a horrible event, whatever that event might be, whether it's George Floyd or whatever. And then in addition to that, I was just reading about the psychological cues that cause people to doom scroll, and like outrage is an addictive drug, right? Like you know how you can get addicted to stress, and you can get addicted to likes, the little dopamine rush from getting a little like on social media or whatever. You can get it by being outraged, and that little of adrenaline. I think people you start to hunt it out because it's just like, God damn, what are they up to now? And that's been like morning, noon, and night for the past 4 years. Is goddamn, what are they up to now, right? So yeah, I think that's very true. And there's also like this horror. There's this like, you want information because you're horrified or you're feeling dread, because having the information might make you feel more in control, but then it doesn't because it's more horrible news. There's some deep-seated weirdness in the human brain, I think, that when it comes to the way that we consume information and the way we distract ourselves with information. I can't talk about this.
Yeah.
I can't. I just hit me. Thanks.
I'm
really sorry.
I'll put a scene missing. It'll be fun.
Okay. Yeah. Yes. But just between you and me, he's been through like a lot of crazy stuff. And you want to know what he said to me? He's like completely blasé about it. He's like, be fascinated. I'm like, how can you say that? I'm like sitting over here like breathing this stuff like it was air. It's coursing through my veins, and you're like, and you're completely detached.
Yeah.
It's bizarre. This whole thing's been farcical. So to get back to the, writing in times of duress, and I feel, and it's funny because like here I am talking about like, it's so hard and it's distracting and I can't think straight. And then you've got like, Anne Frank, who writes an amazing book while trying to not be killed. And then of course dies before it's even published, and really all she's doing is keeping a diary, but still, there's all sorts of books like that where people have been, facing, looking right down the barrel of the gun proverbially, and yet they're able to turn out like masterworks, which is different. I guess I'm not made as strong as stuff. I don't know.
I'm not, but it's weird. It's the weather, and the weather's bad, right? I'm just everywhere, miasma of just news, and so much was written in the 2000s, like the 24-hour news cycle and its influence, and I think kind of like those drug trials. Well, if you only observe a thing for 5 years, you're going to get one set of results. You do it 10, 20, really seeing 20 years of the news cycle. I think the effects to our psyches needs to be studied again. I think we started hitting on it, but I think we just chalked it up like, yeah, it's bad and you should monitor it. But I think it's like really worth some study.
So do you remember the show Max Headroom?
Oh yeah.
Okay, that show was so ahead of its time and called so many things that have happened in our lives.
Oh yeah.
And there was what, and in the first episode, what did they have? Blipverts. Do you remember that?
Mm-hmm.
Where
Mm-hmm.
the TV channel was like trying to shoot all this information at the viewer,
Mm-hmm.
and then so that they would subconsciously consume like tons and tons of commercials, and all it did was make people explode.
Yep. Oh, it's wonderful, wonderful cyberpunk just to tune in and be like, I have no idea what's going on here. The animated him is kind of funny, but like it was really neat. Yeah, really good show.
Well, we've been blipverted, right?
Yeah.
Like we've been
Yeah, for
blipverted with social media, news cycle, et cetera, et cetera. And it's like you can't, you know, just these, myself included, you know, these poor people like sitting up at 2 a.m. in the morning just going, God, this sucks. This sucks. This sucks. Yeah, this sucks too. Yeah. So I think that we're all on a weird train, on a weird, we're all hooked up on some, you know what, I'd say it's heroin, but it's not. It's more like speed. This is all seedy. This is all like a seedy, you know, run down Victorian house in the middle of like, you know, the Central Valley in California, and just like everybody's really sketchy and they're coming in and out of the house. That's America right now. There's scales somewhere on a table. There's no
It's like,
food in the kitchen
makes
anywhere.
me feel really comfortable. I mean, I don't know. I kind of grew up in that place. I'm one of those people that when you take speed, I just get really calm and zen. Yeah, I could deal with all that.
Some
and
guy's
maybe that's
name's
why, right? Like there's something about crisis where I feel like, okay, my worst fantasies are happening, so now I feel really comfortable. Okay, I could deal with this. Because when it's not happening, I just feel crazy because I feel like the worst thing imaginable is gonna happen imminently, and that dread will just fill me. So when bad things actually do happen, emergencies, I snap awake and say, "Oh, okay, this is how I'm ready to handle this kind of thing." I feel very comfortable and very calm.
So you're like writing, you're fine, everything's chill. You're
I haven't
cranking
felt
stuff
this
out.
good in a long time.
Well played.
Weird.
You're literally the dog in the room that's on fire.
Yeah,
instead of this is fine, it's like, hey, this is kind of great. I'm gonna open up my window. My somebody cranked up the heat there. So yeah, but yeah, yeah, it's you know, and maybe I've become more sedate in my old age. I don't know what it is, but yeah, I like not giving a shit about what the Secretary of Education has to say. You know, I like that period in my life, that where there's a baseline where you feel like the adults are taking care of things, and that it's not a complete aristocracy. You know, I tend to get a little tweaked out on outrage, but it's funny because because the one thing that has done is it's like, do you like keep an ideas file on your phone or in your computer or anything like that?
Yeah, sure.
My ideas file is brimming. Like, if I can get some mental calm to execute, I've got some really good ideas. And I had one whip or work in progress or whatever that I was working on, and it started out strong, but I wasn't feeling it lately. And then I started something that had nothing to do with what's going on right now, and I love it. And it's completely disconnected from any of the weirdness that I feel right now. So I'm working on that right now.
That makes sense. You know, an escape, maybe.
Yeah. No, I think that's what it is. I think it's a total escape. I think it's I mean, I would not be surprised if people who write escapist fiction are seeking an escape themselves. You know, I wouldn't be surprised. But I like telling big truths too, or at least attempting to. I know that's what your stuff does. I mean, you seem really committed to the process.
Yeah, maybe. I don't know.
You don't know what gets you to write?
definitely not. But I do, you know, the intersection of current events and what I think about writing, stories where these things touch. It's all about, I guess, shrinking the stakes and personalizing them. I mean, I know that if you're following how to perfect your pitch and really make your story seem the most compelling, it's like this endless escalation. Well, it's the fate of the planet. No, the solar system, the galaxy, the universe. It's the fate of the fucking universe, the multiverse. It's like, okay, you can't keep getting bigger and bigger and bigger. So much like your story, your novel, shrink it down. Find somebody it affects. Tell it. You don't have to have them be the one that then also comes up with the cure, or also was the cause, or is the final survivor. The exceptionalism piece, maybe that's escapism for some people. Like, you just want to fantasize that you're the Tom Cruise stand-in, and you're just going to ride this character to do awesome things. But I don't know. I find a place where the heart kind of intersects with what's going on, and the stakes are deeply personal rather than global. And I can tell that kind of story. And so current events kind of reach me in there, but the actual substance of the events, no. I mean, it's so repetitive. History is so repetitive, it holds no interest in me. I find there to be infinite combinations of the human heart, amazing things that people will strive for, fail, then try again, then fail again, and die failing. And all the human stories can be interesting to me, but the ins and outs of any kind of prior decade or current decade of mankind politically, it's the same exact thing. I posted a diagram kind of derived from like Rise of the City State, 700 or whatever, 300 BC, and it's just like nothing's changed. These are the exact motions of the political schema. I think the more you have at stake, the more it feels like, no, we should still be aspirational and it's going to get better. And maybe what I sound like is too nihilistic. Yes, our kids have to live in this future. I get it. The reduction of non-consensual suffering is like the only political statement I could really get behind. But in a bigger sense, like, this moment's not more unique than any other moment. And the more you have to lose, the more it feels like it. But like, through a larger lens, it really doesn't seem to be, at least to me.
I think there's a lot of, I think what constrains humanity's progress in terms of like politically and intrapersonal
progress. See, you have to pause. Make it. Yeah. You're about to say what hinders progress. I need to hear progress defined.
Yeah. Well, okay. So what I mean by that is we know that we have technological progress, right? We know that we have scientific well, I mean, we've got, telecommunications, things like that. You don't see that as progress?
No. Okay. No. You're using no, it could be, but you're using an analogy to a thing to escape trying to define it. What's progress?
The development. Okay, bear with me, because now you're forcing me into a semantic puzzle that I want to solve. So it's progress defined would be the improvement of an undertaking in order to achieve greater success or results. No. How would you define?
It's so nebulous. Well, I'd break it. I'd say that we exist in a cultural biome filled with this notion of teleology. Same root from telephone, that a thing goes from A to B, that there's a progressive tendency in the world. And we've even if you know enough about Darwin to discard social Darwinism, survival of the fittest, even if you know that he meant survival of, you know, those best able to adapt to their environment, it didn't mean better. It's no hierarchy. So if I take up our technology and say, okay, well, why is that a progress? Well, it reduces physical labor of a person so they can do more intellectual pursuits. Well, why the fuck is that better? Well, because then they can be really stressed out and anxious. Or maybe they'll live a longer life. Why is living a longer life better? Well, because you get more life. Well, how's your quality of life during those longer lives? Well, shit. Oh, was that progress? Okay, is it progress when some of the planet get these things and the rest don't? Is it progress if some on the planet get the cool notions in their head, not just the stuff, but they get the cool notions in their head of, you know, higher ed and enlightenment, post-enlightenment, you know, education? Well, are they any happier? Well, no, they're fucking miserable. Well, okay, is it better or not? Does everyone get it? No, certainly not. So trying to reduce, and I'm only teasing you because, like, this notion is so insidious, but if you unpack it, there's nothing behind it. There's nothing behind it. Well, why? Well, so we can get off the planet, so that we can survive the death of the planet and have colonies on other planets to continue the species. Well, why would you do that?
This is so what you're talking about right now. What you're talking about right now is the whip that I was working on before that I got kind of derailed on, and I was like, I'm gonna park that one for a little bit and work on this other one that I'm working on. It's kind of that same thing. It's actually an anti-progress story, but it's not anti-progress, but calling into question, you know, what actually is progress and that kind of thing. But I was just kind of getting at the whole idea that because earlier you said something that I thought was really, you know, on point, which was that, not that the other stuff wasn't, but that you know, there hasn't been much that's changed since the first city state, and it's funny because I really experienced that just recently. I was talking about Trump and everything that I was to one of my kids and my middle kid, and everything that I was using to describe him with was historic examples.
Mm-hmm. Right.
It's like, shoot, man, we haven't learned anything.
Not a thing, really. Not a thing.
Seriously,
Not a thing, David. Like, if any of it, the only thing that I, you know, and I've thought about this so many times, the only thing I can derive is any effort towards reducing or stopping or not participating in the non-consensual harm of others. That's as good as it gets. I don't really think there's another thing, because even if you say, well, no, it's, you know, progress could be defined by every single human's ability to meet their Maslow's pyramid, you know, basic needs. It's like, yeah, but you could meet all those needs and still pollute the planet so badly that, like, the planet dies, or you can still meet those needs and be a sociopathic murderer. There's nothing in that attainment of our basic needs that is better. So I'm like, well, what the heck? if it's not living a longer life, if it's not attaining more material goods, like, how do you define within our current ideology, like, what is even progress or a good, better, best states? That's the only place I can find it, or else you end up in everyone's definition of heaven, you know, is incompatible with each other's. You can't write a utopia that isn't a dystopia. The two are synonyms. Even though you don't really see a lot of utopian fiction anymore.
Yeah, well, and also I think that like, even in dystopian fiction, like, often they're sort of framed as these, the best laid plans of mice and men kind of narratives where, you try to set up to create a utopia and then it goes, horribly pear-shaped. Yeah, that's very true.
Well, they have to. They have to. I mean,
not in mine.
well, that's the problem. We're trapped in a Cartesian nightmare. Like, we are limited by our own biological apparatus to come up with stuff. And what we always come up with is a circular, recursive, or back to ourselves again, because we don't know anyone that isn't ourselves. Because our sense of knowing begins with ourselves. Maybe you can expand that into higher forms of empathy, but still, all of our plans just kind of repeat back on the same exact, almost biologically driven, end point.
Yeah, I think it is biologically driven. I think that we give ourselves more credit than we do, because if you think about it, a lot of behavior is just based on resource. What's the word I'm looking for? Resource identification. It's like ants. It's like there's an ant hill near your house, and so it invades your house, and you find it on the countertop, and they're on an expedition for sugar or whatever, and those guys are Leif Erikson. They're Ibn Battuta. They're Marco Polo. They're out there looking for the stuff that they need.
But I don't think that's a bad thing. So the only way I can navigate that situation of like,
it's not a judgment call.
Like, my rule is just, find the activities that make me feel the way I want to feel, and maybe sometimes that is listening to Morrissey and being a mopey bastard, and lamenting day jobs, or gnashing my teeth at temporary politics. Like, let myself be present in the moment, but generally, like, what am I going to write? What am I going to work on? How am I going to feel? I just try to say, well, I'm just an ant carrying a bit of cupcake from the picnic. Today I'm going to choose to feel this. I'm going to explore writing this story because it has heart. It might not have meaning, and it might not literally solve a problem that I respect as progress or needed in the world, but it emotionally connects to me.
Yeah, no, I frankly, I think art without purpose is probably, most of the time, it's the most rewarding art. For the longest time.
Well, that's like a perverted version of Oscar Wilde.
Yeah.
All art is meaningless, right?
Yeah, but I mean, so I write all day, right? I mean, it's my job. I write all day, and then I get off, and then it's like, oh great, I'm gonna write fiction. and so, it takes a little while to like adjust, right? And some days I don't adjust at all. But even when I am adjusting, the endeavor of writing a book or even a short story, it's an effort, right? It's a thing. It's a thing that I want to do. It's a project, right? For whatever reason, for whatever motivation, self-gratification, want to make money, want to see what I can accomplish, whatever the motive is, it's a thing that you got to do. But so when I was younger, up until my 20s, I used to draw and paint all the time, and then I just completely stopped. And then several months ago, I started drawing and painting again. Sort of with purpose, but really not. And it's great. I have like, it serves no purpose. It's like making mud pies, right? It's like a little kid making mud pies. It serves no purpose. It's just having fun. I guess all I'm getting at is this, we're talking about like, sometimes when we're writing or whatever, what are the different motivations and all that, and it's been really rewarding to like have to do an artistic thing
Mm-hmm.
and it having no worth at all. Like
Mm-hmm.
no direction, no, like nobody's going to see it. Nobody's going to go like, well done. I don't get a
Mm-hmm.
gold star, none of that
Mm-hmm.
stuff. And,
Mm-hmm.
and there's something kind of magnificent about that. I think it's really related to human effort in general. And what I mean by that is that the history of humanity is a giant machine. Every life, every generation is taking things a little step forward, and we really don't know what that is. And maybe there is no purpose behind it, right? Maybe it is just a giant anthill looking for more sugar. But but every one of those little turns of the tiny cogs is absolutely important and absolutely meaningless at the same time.
Right. Right. Exactly.
And that's all right. That's kind of beautiful. It's like a note in a symphony, right? On its own, it sucks.
All right. So that was really beautiful. That was really, really well said. But I'm just going to go back just a second. So you're motivated by making something that nobody's going to see, that has no, pressure behind it.
Maybe. I mean,
yeah,
I don't know if I'm motivated. It just.
Well, if you're doing it,
I'm gratified. I think I'm gratified. So I'm pursuing the gratification. Yeah.
Right.
The gratification
That's motivation.
is there's. Yeah. Okay. All right.
So what motivates to write then? You say, sometimes writing after a day of writing fiction is a push. You have to seek the motivation or find it. What does motivate you?
Oh, with the writing, it's because it's. I would imagine you're a saxophonist and you've been playing blues all your life, and but then you get to go home and maybe play jazz, and so it's nice to have something else to do that's in a related field. Like, do you ever write haikus?
I have.
Right? Like haikus are fun. They're like little Rubik's cubes, little thing that you can figure out. And so I think writing fiction and all that, that's a total change of pace from feature writing, column writing, news writing, all that other kind of stuff, promo writing, whatever. And
so what took you so long? Because your book is incredible. And I would not have thought it was anyone's first. I would not have thought it was anyone's first novel. Like, obviously, yes, you write, but there's a lot of people working in journalism that can't write fiction. It's not like you just snap over. I know a lot of technical writers that don't write fiction.
Yeah.
I cannot seriously believe that this was your first major go at fiction.
All I've written before that is a few short stories. And I'm talking about as an adult. Obviously, when you're a kid, you're in creative writing classes and stuff like that. You got to write. But as an adult, some short stories here and there. My buddy Dave and I, we used to have a 1,500 words short story challenge that we would pose to each other, and just for fun, just to, that guy's funny, man. He should write. He's really good. And then other than that, I think that me and my close set of friends were just consumers of fiction. We're just, and so I think maybe there's you read enough of it that you start to absorb the mechanics of it by osmosis, and you write more through, this is going to sound really pretentious, but through like a weird set of divination, a weird kind of divination rather than a methodical process. And in a way, maybe isn't that better? Because seriously, like so much of English storytelling, especially American and British fiction and Canadian fiction, like follows these narrative norms that are just agonizing. It's just the same story over and over again. I mean, how many times do you want to, and like, especially when you just think about like, you know, what is it? Joseph Campbell and the Power of Myth, and just like how he broke down all these different narratives and said, you know, these are basically just Occidental and even Oriental mythos and story forms that have just been around forever and ever and ever, and we keep retelling them, and maybe we should try something different. And so if you come at it from an oblique angle, maybe you're going to write something different, and that's going to be compelling. And I know that's certainly what I feel like when I'm reading your stuff, or Bill's book, Bill Iker, the Curious Exploration of David Sparks, or whatever it's called. Yeah, or Seeley's book, Flicker of Shadows. Like all these books are like totally like, let's do something different, you know. And that's always more interesting. When I was in college, I took a class. It was English language writing by non-native English speakers, or was it non-American English speakers? I don't know what it was, but it was like, you know, English might not necessarily be their first language. And so it was books by like Chinua Achebe and V.S. Naipaul and R.K. Narayan and all these different people. And all of them did like way more interesting stuff than the last, you know, John Updike book that you read. And not that John Updike sucks, he's freaking amazing, but you know, but they just did way different stuff. Like I got a book floating around here, The Witch Herbalist of the Remote Town by Amos Tatula. Just this African guy, but he wrote like sort of like fantasy, but from an African standpoint. Completely bizarre and absolutely marvelous. Like one of the best books you'll ever read. The hell is that? I see that. I can't see it. I can't see it. I thought it might be at the ready, but yeah, that one's good. That one's good.
Well, but you know, no shortage of new voices out there at any given time. Even.
Yeah, that's why I'm glad you're doing this podcast.
It's just distribution and acceptance and getting picked up, right? So what we're talking about,
the model isn't going to happen in our lives.
Right. You know, whether we think about the control of radio, right, and who could be on radio play, like how tightly controlled it was and orchestrated to produce those hits, how tight TV was. That, I don't know.
Even when we finally got an ubiquitous, almost communal printing press, i.e. Amazon for all intents and purposes, it's owned by one company, by one guy. And when it comes to the ebook distribution platform, you're stuck to Kindles. It's totally closed loop. And there's other, don't get me wrong. I mean, you can get on Ingram and get over to, you know, all the other ones, but it's hard to, and look at, I'm no expert at I got one book, right? But I would say that it's probably hard to be a successful indie author unless you had a pretty good niche carved out on Amazon. Maybe
no, you're right, but this is a much bigger topic, and we'll save that for your follow-up guest appearance, because it's a real topic. It's one that I really like to talk about, but you're more interesting than talking about that,
the book market. The book market that we'll never fix. Bitching about the book market with Micah.
I am going to have to wrap this up a little bit earlier than I had hoped.
Okay. All right.
I'm just being summoned, but this was terrific. I think I can't believe, one, that it's taken so long for us to have a face-to-face.
Yeah.
And two, I mean, you've got a lot of really, really really good insights. I'm so glad you share them with us on social media. I'm glad you're doing this here. You really brighten up the room and like level us up in terms of like this kind of consciousness and not.
I don't know about that,
there's a lot
man.
of no, I do. I mean, there's a lot of really fresh to radical thought thinkers out there, and they're brilliant. I mean, I feel like they are the smartest, 20 to early 30 somethings that I've ever met. A lot smarter than I was.
Right?
But
what is the deal with younger people being so together?
I don't know, but they're also really immature because this is kind of their first go around, and I don't know. I'm not calling you old. I guess I kind of am, but you definitely
I'm real old.
Bring something that I think was kind of missing in there, in that chorus of our voices shouting into the void.
Yeah, well, I now I feel really old.
Not really. It doesn't take a lot to be older than young people on the internet.
Yeah, that's true. Well, I would say this is that it's, and I don't want to go off on another tangent because I know that you got to shut down, but it is a bummer when we have this, like I look at like music and writing, and we've got a lot of vehicles where people can do creative stuff and get it out there. Mm-hmm. But I think once you hit about like say mid 40s, a lot of people kind of age out, and it's a huge bummer because people should keep growing artistically throughout their entire lives. Mm-hmm. In my case, I felt like I wasn't able to write a book because I felt like I hadn't kind of earned it, and like because I'm a real believer in fundamentals. And I think that a lot of modern fiction, like at least like in terms of just sheer writing chops, isn't there, and that includes like traditionally published stuff. I think there's a lot of shittily written books out there. Not to say I'm super awesome guy. I just felt I hadn't earned it. I needed to get better at using words and having a voice that I felt was honest, and so I feel like people shouldn't stop their growth just because of age, but it happens a lot. It happens a lot. Like I got buddies who are in bands, things like that, and then they just like stop. And I'm like, why? Why? You're awesome. Keep going.
On one hand, I'm awed by your reverence for the writing craft, but on the other hand, kind of, a little bullshit. You could have been writing. I'm glad you're writing now, but yeah. No, I'm really glad you are. And with that, thank you very much for agreeing to do this strange little thing.
Yeah, I'll do it again anytime.
I think we're gonna have to follow up on some of these topics.
Yeah, I'll chit chat with you. We can talk. We can talk more about how Abe Vigoda and Kelly Guilfoyle are trying to steal our DNA and give them to the Chinese Communist Party, so we buy more T-shirts.
Back by the Jesuits and the Rosarians.
You're following Xenon. Oh, that's great. Lamest timeline ever.
All right, friend. Chat with you again soon.
Bye. Thanks, Micah.